the record.
This is People of the State of Illinois versus Melody Glinowitz, 16 CF 239. People by Assistant State's Attorneys Jeffrey Facklin and Ryan Kale. Ms. Glinowitz is present on bond. She is represented by her attorneys Don Morrison, Brian Smith, and Vasily Russis, also all present. Case comes up this morning for sentencing.
Is everybody, are both sides ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Has everyone reviewed the pre-sentence investigation report?
Yes, Judge.
Yes, Your Honor.
Any additions, corrections, clarifications, modifications?
Judge, there is one. I know
Okay.
the defense has a couple, but there
Page,
is
line,
page 2, line 34. Judgment of conviction has not been entered yet, Judge. It should read offense pled guilty. And I believe Mr. Morrison had a couple.
semantics.
It is semantics, I agree, Judge.
Okay. Anything else?
Yes, Judge. On page 3, lines 11 and 12, that section is entitled Official Version of Offense. The first part of that sentence that begins at the end of line either 10, I guess. His wife, Melody Glinowitz, also held an official position in the charter of this Explorer post. We agree with that. However, the last part of that says, which made her a fiduciary and therefore also responsible for the proper use of charitable funds. While I recognize that that may be the state's version of the offense, that is not the defense version of the offense. The defense disagrees with that, and I don't believe that that should be listed as the official version of the offense.
Are you folks in agreement too? That's a legal determination. Who's a fiduciary, who's not?
It would have been something we would have had to prove at trial, Judge. We obviously think we would have sustained that burden, but I'll leave it to the court's discretion.
But that's not part of this charge, is it?
No, it's not.
Okay. Then I'll strike the sentence that says which made her a fiduciary and therefore responsible.
Thank you, Judge. And then a couple lines down from that, line 17, it indicates that Lieutenant Glinowitz commingled his own money with charitable donations in one of several bank accounts. That is not true. He only commingled his own funds into one bank account,
Yes,
and then later
that's what I
switched
heard.
that bank account. But that the words "of several" should be stricken.
In agreeing?
Yes, it was just the one
Yes.
Explorer account.
And then, Your Honor, on page 5, line 44, it lists one of my client's children as Daniel, parentheses DJ. That's Donald.
Oh, Donald.
And then finally, Judge, after the PSI was concluded, one of Mel's other sons, David Glinowitz, wrote a letter that he was hoping to get to the PSI as part of the PSI. I talked to the prosecution about this. By agreement, we're going to submit a letter from David Glinowitz dated 4/8/2022 as the defense addendum to the PSI for the court's consideration.
Oh, okay, as an addendum, yes. Otherwise, you're allowed as, when we come to the mitigation phase, to introduce whichever letters you may have. All right. Since there is no agreement, since there is an agreement, I will accept it as part of the pre-sentence investigation report.
Thank you, Judge. That's all of the additions, corrections, and deletions to the PSI from the defense.
Anything further, gentlemen?
Not with respect to additions or
Okay.
corrections.
Any evidence in aggravation then?
We do, Judge.
You may present it.
Thank you, Your Honor. First,
And Judge, just before we start that, one housekeeping matter. Both sides have tendered to each other exhibit lists and lists of exhibits. For the sake of expediency, we're going to stipulate to the admission of all of those exhibits. If we could just say at this point that I actually have a book for the courts, and I can tender the originals to the clerk, but for purposes of aggravation and mitigation, we're stipulating to the foundation of the exhibits and that they will be admitted
All
into
right,
evidence.
okay, and I can introduce them as they present,
Right.
Thank you.
since there is no objection.
This is just for you. I've got some that I'll give to the clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. I'll stop interrupting.
That's okay. Are you going to present testimony?
Yes, good morning, Your Honor. Yes, the people's
Mr.
first,
Kao, I'm sorry.
yes, thank you, Your Honor. People's first witness in aggravation would be William Pepler of the Boy Scouts of America.
You may call your first witness. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may take the stand, make yourself comfortable. The deputy will stretch that microphone as far as it can be stretched. So it'll pick up, I hope. And you may proceed, Mr. Kao.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, could you please state your name and spell your full name for the benefit of the record and for the benefit of Judge Boris?
Full name is William Pepler. I go by Bill, but it's William, excuse me, and Pepler, like salt and pepper, thrown in L, Peppler.
Thank you. And what is your current line of employment?
I'm a Medicare health insurance agent, and I also drive a school bus.
Very good. Yeah, I want to call your attention to any current or past involvement that you've had in a professional capacity with the Boy Scouts of America. Can you describe what that involvement what was in the past?
Sure. I started with the Boy Scouts as a professional in May of 2015, and I was in that capacity until May of 2017.
Now, when you say you were with the Boy Scouts for those years in a professional capacity, what specifically was your title or your role and duties?
So my role was a district executive, so I oversaw all the units that the Boy Scouts had in a area, which in this case was called the North Star District, which included Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, venturing programs, Explorer Post, which in Fox Lake was both the police and fire.
Yeah, and what specifically did you do in that capacity?
So my role was to help build units, grow units, design or initiate new units where I could, raise funds for the district, and make sure that the charters or the paperwork for each unit was completed on a timely basis, and all the pieces that are required to be a unit were in place.
With regard to organizations within the umbrella of the Boy Scouts of America, can you describe what, if any, relationship the Boy Scouts have and had in the past with police explorer programs, both in Lake County and beyond?
So the Boy Scouts of America has always had a very strong partnership with the law enforcement, and it was called the Explorer Program. So that was where we would work with police departments to bring in young co-eds, male and female, to see if law enforcement was actually a career that they'd like to pursue. Some decided it wasn't, others decided that was going to be their career path.
So why specifically were the Explorer programs, or why are they under the umbrella of the Boy Scouts? Has it just been that's always the way it's been, or is there any rhyme or reason to that?
It's always been that way. The Boy Scouts had their Explorer program is for anyone looking into a professional environment. Could be healthcare, could be legal, could be fire. I mean, it just goes on and on.
Very good. Now, you touched upon it briefly already, but could you describe in a little more detail for Judge Boris the exact purpose and function of a Police Explorer program?
So the Police Explorer program is designed to bring in young people, bring them into law enforcement, kind of see some of the day-to-day routines of a police department, anywhere from they'll do ride-alongs, they do trainings, they'll do security details. In some aspects, they even go as far as to do more in the far as criminal investigations, but it's really to young people their feet wet in law enforcement to see if that's a career that they would like to pursue.
All right, and under the rules and the guidelines of the Boy Scouts of America, do these Explorer posts have to follow certain guidelines or rules regarding funding and things of that nature?
Yes.
And what is the primary way that, in your experience, these police Explorer posts obtain funding?
So primarily it was through outside activities. They could be doing security for an event or venue, like the summer fests and that. They can be doing car washes. They could be doing other events, basically to bring money in to help for their expenses along the way.
All right, and under Boy Scout guidelines, are individual Explorer posts supposed to actively solicit funds from businesses?
They are never supposed to solicit funds from businesses because that's what the Boy Scouts and the districts, my job as a whole is to solicit businesses. So they were not supposed to do that.
Now, if an individual business or individual person in a community wanted to donate funds to a local Explorer post, is there a proper way for that to be done?
Yes, that can be done. There's also paperwork with that. And even anytime an Explorer post or any unit is out soliciting funds, they're supposed to fill out a form and turn it into the district office.
All right, now with regard to the particular offices or positions that are held by the adults that run an individual police Explorer post, could you describe what the primary offices or positions are within a local Explorer post?
Sure. You have the executive office, which typically in the police department is the chief of police of that town. It's kind of in a corporation, the CEO, if you will. And then there's the, I guess you would call the manager or the advisor who works with the youth on a day-to-day basis or on an event basis, who is actually the youth leader. And then there's associate advisors, which are basically like assistant managers in a corporation.
Now, you mentioned the CEO. Is another name for that CEO the post committee chairman?
No, that would be the executive officer of the post, which in this case it would have been the chief of police in Fox Lake.
Okay. Now, within an individual Explorer post, is there also a position known as post committee chairman?
Yes.
Okay.
So as in like corporate America, it would be like your board of directors. So the head of the board of directors would be your committee chairman, can be assistant chairmans, and then there's different people that have different duties within the Explorer post in the as committee members.
All right, so if you could then describe for the role of post committee chairman, can you describe exactly what that person would do, what the role is?
So it's very similar to corporate America. It would be the board of directors, that's the chairman of the board. Everything falls to the committee chairman. And then I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and then the people on the committee report to the committee chairman.
And what are some of the specific tasks that are performed by the post committee chairman?
So the post committee chairman, primary task is to run the board of directors in the adult fashion. They also work very closely with the post advisor, who actually is the youth interface for the Explorer post, and then under the direction of as the CEO, which would be the chief of police in this case.
Now, with regard to post committee chairman, what role does the committee chairman have in regard to money, like in terms of planning for trips or budgeting, things like that? Can you describe that at all?
They're very involved in that. In the Boy Scouts, we actually call it the key three, which would be the executive officer, the post advisor, and the committee chairman. So anything, even though you have a treasurer on the committee, everything flows up through the committee chairman. And actually, when we charter a unit, which is basically making a legal document to operate for the next year, the committee chairman, the executive person, which would be the chief of police, and then the post advisor signatures are all required on that document.
In your experience, is post committee chairman, are they typically pretty intimately involved in the finances of the individual post?
Typically. In fact, in the Boy Scout, we highly recommend that the committee chairman and the post advisor not be related,
That they not be related?
that they not be related.
Now, you touched upon post-committee advisor a moment ago. Could you describe in a little more detail what the advisor does?
So the advisor works with the youth on a day-to-day basis, working through policing activities, scheduling ride-alongs, any events that they're going to, that's their leader.
All right, and under Boy Scout guidelines, are Explorer Post officers allowed to be paid for their services?
Never.
Now, also with your experience with the Boy Scouts in providing oversight over these Explorer Posts, do you have knowledge of the typical kinds of expenses that would be associated with running and operating an Explorer Post?
Sure. Typically, the funds used to run a post are day-to-day operations, so it'd be what we consider to be their Class A uniform or police uniform. It just says same police, it says Explorer Post, excuse me. Sorry about that. Their Class B uniform, which is more like a T-shirt, going to events, sometimes going to events of somebody speaking or an example of police work, and a lot of times these police posts compete in competitions with each other across the country, well, locally, regionally, and across the country.
So essentially uniforms and activities directly related to law enforcement training for the youth, is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
I want to call your attention, Mr. Pepler, specifically to an Explorer Post known as Fox Lake Police Explorer Post 300. In the year 2015, when you assumed your duties with the Boy Scouts, did you specifically become acquainted with that Explorer Post?
Yes.
Can you describe how and when roughly you came to know that post?
So it was rechartering time or permit to operate for the following year. There were some signatures missing. Every adult leader is required, even if they're not youth-facing, to have youth protection training. We were missing some of those documents, so I was sent to go visit with Joe Glenowitz in this case, because he is a post advisor, to meet with him and go over all the things that we needed to recharter that post for next year, and then also collect their funding to the Boy Scouts of America to operate as a police explorer post.
And did you come to know Mr. Glenowitz's name, his full name is Charles Joseph Glenowitz, is that right?
I never really knew him as Charles till after the fact, but all the documents did say Charles Joseph Glenowitz.
All right, and at that time, he was a lieutenant with the Fox Lake Police Department?
That is correct.
All right, do you remember when in 2015 you first started interacting with Lieutenant Glenowitz on those issues?
Yes, I was sent to the Fox Lake by my supervisor to the Fox Lake Police Department to capture those signatures. Got there, Joe just happened to be in a training offsite, and they said where I could go find him. I was also warned, be prepared, he may dress you down. And I said, okay. But when I met with him, introduced myself, he came to me, big smile, outstretched arms, and we actually became, over the time then, pretty close.
All right, and you took over your duties, was it May of 2015, is that right?
May of 2015, correct.
All right, so those interactions you just described would have been probably May or June of 2015?
Probably, yeah, May, probably June.
Okay. Now, I want to then direct your attention a little bit later that summer of 2015, specifically to August of 2015. Do you recall having further interaction and conversations with Lieutenant Glenowitz about moving where the control of the Fox Lake Explorer Post would be held?
Yes.
Can you describe that?
So Joe asked me, well, talk to me. He says, Bill, we have a new city advisor, city chair. She's anti-police. Would like to move the post from being under the control of the city to that of the American Legion. He also went on to say, how easy is that to do? I said, it's very easy, it's just paperwork.
All right, and he made that request, just so we're clear, he made that request, why was that?
Basically because they said the new city chair, if I'm getting that title correct,
City administrator?
City administrator, yes.
Right.
Said was anti-police and wanted to shut his program down.
All right, and with regard, well, let me back up. Do you recall about how many times Lieutenant Glenowitz contacted you, asking you questions about those issues during August of 2015? I know it's not going to be exact, but just roughly.
We had quite a few conversations, and when I told him it was easy, he thought I was just going to go do it. And I said, no, Joe, I can't just change your charter. He said, well, I thought you told me it was easy. I go, it is easy. I said, but we also have a fire post, we have Cub Scout units, we have Boy Scout units, we have other units in Fox Lake, and I don't want to upset the city over just one unit. So, you know, we have to be careful of how we do that. And that's when Joe said, well, what happens if I have you talk to the mayor? And I go, sure. I actually tried to talk to the city administrator. I left a voicemail, but I never got a return call.
Is it fair to say that over the course of August of 2015, Lieutenant Glenowitz contacted you maybe more and more frequently as the month went on? Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay.
Not only did he contact me, his wife contacted me, Melody, begging me, please move that Explorer post. You don't know how much this means to Joe. You don't know how much it means to the community. And I will say that Explorer post was probably one of the most elite Explorer posts that we had in this area, and have actually won a lot of national championships. But they found out they engaged in far more activities than what they really should have with under the guidelines of the Boy Scouts.
Now, with regard to Lieutenant Glenowitz, can you describe as the month of August 2015 went on, his tone or any sense of urgency as he continued to contact you?
There seemed to be a lot of urgency, and even on that Monday, he said, Bill, if I get the mayor to say it's okay, are you good with that? I said, yeah, if the mayor says it's okay, we can do it. So not only did Melody contact me on that Monday, begging me, please, you need to move this charter. You need to move this charter. You got to save this unit. I had the mayor's going, yeah, Bill, we have no problem with the Boy Scouts. We'd have no problem with the Explorer post. If there's some animosity now with the new leadership within the city, we have no problems with changing that ownership or the chartering partner from the city of Fox Lake to the American Legion.
And you mentioned Lieutenant Glenowitz's wife, Melody. I want to call your attention specifically to August 31st of 2015 in the evening. Did you receive a phone call that evening from someone who identified themselves as Melody Glenowitz?
Yes.
All right. You never met with her personally, but just
Never,
a phone call?
just phone calls.
All right. And she identified herself by name as Melody Glenowitz?
Yes.
And can you describe, once she did that, can you describe what she asked you to do during that phone call?
She begged and pleaded for me to move that charter to the American Legion, that Explorer post meant everything to Joe, and he didn't want to lose it. So when I talked to her, I talked to the mayor. The mayor said he had no problem. I even told Joe on that day, I says, okay, it's Monday. I go, I'll have it done tomorrow.
And just so we're clear, can you describe the tone of her voice in terms of urgency and demeanor, things of that nature?
Basically, I hate to use the word begging, but pleading to get that done to save that post, because she was very afraid, Joe was very afraid that the city was going to dissolve that program.
All right, now I'd like to ask you about some records pertaining to the Fox Lake Explorer Post 300. As a preliminary matter, does the Boy Scouts of America, do they keep records of rosters of the individual Explorer posts on an annual basis?
Yes, not just on an annual basis from day one.
All right, and I believe pursuant to the stipulation, people at this time are asking to admit People's Exhibit Number 1 being a record of the roster. Is that correct, Mr. Morrison?
Yes, it's admitted as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. All right, and so, Mr. Pepler, just showing you People's Exhibit Number 1, is this is a document that you've reviewed before coming to court today, and it does reflect the Explorer Post rosters from 2009 through 2015, is that correct?
That is correct, with our registrar's signature.
All right, and these documents this document reflects who the particular office holders are for the individual Explorer posts for each of those years, is that correct?
That's correct.
So, and these records reflected in the year 2009, the Explorer Post advisor was Charles Joseph Glenowitz, correct?
Correct.
And in 2009, the associate advisor for that post was Melody Glenowitz, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, briefly, I don't think you talked about it before, could you describe what the role of associate advisor is for an Explorer post?
Sure, it's like an assistant manager in a business. They help the manager, or in this case, help the advisor. So she would help Joe with whatever tasks needed to be done. If he couldn't fill in on a day, it would have been her job to take over and implement the program.
Thank you. And then these documents also reflect that in each of the years from 2010 through 2015, so 2010, 2011, 2012, 13, 14, and 15, these records reflect that Charles Joseph Glenowitz was also the Explorer Post advisor for each of those years. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And these records also reflect that from each of those years of 2010 through 2015, that Melody Glenowitz was the Post Committee Chairman during those years. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. And with the exhibit having been admitted, I would ask to tender this to the court.
You may,
Thank you, Your Honor. And with that, if I may have just a moment, Your Honor?
yes.
No further questions, Judge.
All right, cross-examination, Mr. Smith or Mr. Morrison or Mr. Smith, okay. We
So
saw,
we asked if we could have the, screen.
but you have to be connected. Doug?
We'll connect to the media card, Judge.
All right. Media card is on. Where is he when you need him? I'm sure they'll have other.
Mayor,
You may.
thank you. Good morning, Mr. Pavlov.
Good morning.
Sir, when did you first meet Joe Glenowitz?
I can't give you the exact date, but it was after it was time for rechartering, and I needed to go meet with Joe for signatures. We were missing some youth protection training guidelines, and then also to get the money to charter the Explorer Post for the following year.
Okay.
So
So
I-
that time in 2015, whether that was May or June, and I'm not asking you to, pick an exact date there, that was the first time you'd ever met Joe?
That is correct.
Okay. And when did you first meet Melody?
I never met Melody.
You never met her in person?
No.
So as far as you know, when you were talking to her on the phone, she said that's who she was?
Correct.
Now, to go sort of back to the Explorer posts as sort of how they're operated generally, not specific to the Fox Lake Post 300, Boy Scouts don't audit those, run those directly, do they?
No.
So you're not looking at their finances every year and going through with, auditing, why'd you spend money on this, or
No.
you need more money for this, anything like that?
No.
So how often, with a normal post, would you say you're involved with them as far as, I understand there's a rechartering process, is it May every year, is that just your fiscal year there?
It's typically that for Explorer Post, so yes, I typically meet with Explorer Post once a year.
Okay, so
Unless-
but that's normal, once a year?
That's normal. Unless they're adding something or they're doing something different, then we need additional paperwork, then I have to collect that paperwork. But other than that,
And that would be on a
Once a year.
case by case?
case by case, yes.
And Boy Scouts, they don't contribute, as an organization, they don't contribute to the funds, they don't say, here's $20,000 in seed money to start
No.
a post?
No.
Now, in fact, these job descriptions you've talked about, the post committee, the chair, the post advisor, the associate advisor, you give them model guidelines for how to sort of assign those duties, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And in fact, you sort of leave it to the posts to come up with their own more distinct positions?
Correct.
And you made reference previously to something, sort of common term is a treasurer. That's not a term or a position in the guidelines, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So in fact, the treasurer could be anyone on the board. It could be a duty assigned to one or more people.
It could be, yes.
Okay. So it isn't that the post committee chairperson, for example, would be the one who has to be in charge of the finances or the bank accounts.
Correct.
Now, in fact, turning to the Fox Lake Police Explorer post, you reviewed paperwork at least the once in May of 15, right?
Yes.
And you, in fact, never saw Melody Glinowitz's signature on any of those forms, did you?
Correct.
And one of the lines that's in this exploring post guide, if we go to page, it's labeled K8112. And this, for the record, Your Honor, is Defense Exhibit 18. You can just scroll down. And the right-hand side, can you see this, sir?
Yes.
Or you can read it on
I can read it right here.
The right-hand column, the second paragraph from the bottom, what does that read?
On the right-hand side, second
Yes.
pair, the ultimate responsibility for the post rests with the advisor. This person is recruited.
So that is not, it is not the post committee chairperson who's in charge of it. They don't have ultimate responsibility.
They don't have ultimate responsibility. Ultimate responsibility rests with the advisor.
Okay. And specifically to Fox Lake Explorer posts, you don't have any firsthand knowledge of how they defined their roles or who they assigned duties to, right?
I know who they design or assign duties to, but I don't know what their job functions were as those assigned.
Okay. So you know that, for example, Joe Glinowitz was the post advisor, you had some committee members and a chairperson, but you don't know what they did on a day-to-day basis.
Correct.
And again, you don't know who was in control of the funds?
I only know who the signers were on the bank account. That's all I know.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you, sir.
Redirect your thing.
Briefly, Judge. Mr. Pepler, you, in your original testimony, you indicated that it's not recommended that a husband and wife be both post advisor and post committee chairman. Is that correct?
Correct.
Can you
And
describe why?
sure. And I talked to Joe about this, and I've talked to other units about this when I was in charge of the area. You'd never want a husband and wife to be the two signers on the bank account. Checks and balances kind of goes out the window there.
Now, we've already established Melody Glinowitz was the post committee chairman for many of those years.
Correct.
Question. How involved is a post committee chairman typically versus just other random adult members of the post?
They're a lot more involved typically because they're running the committee and making sure everything that's needed for the post is done.
Thank you. Nothing further, Judge.
And you may step down. Thank you, sir. Next witness, please.
Judge, if I could have our attorney table for the next witness. Our next witness is Agent Schmid.
This is the witness. Oh, okay. That's where you're aiming. All right. How would I know? Good morning. You solemnly swear to tell the truth and all truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. You may take the stand, make yourself comfortable. Pull the microphone towards your mouth as close as possible. Pull it close. It doesn't pick up that well. Don't want your own podium?
No, because I need to see my computer from here, Judge.
Oh, okay. All right.
Can I have it switched to the attorney table, Judge?
You're asking too much now. Attorney, which one are you two?
Thank you. Sir, can you please state your name and spell your full name?
Yes, my name is John Schmid. First name John, last name Schmid.
What is your current employment?
I'm a forensic accountant with the FBI.
And how long have you been with the FBI?
3 years.
Do you have prior experience in accounting?
Yes, I began my career in public accounting in 2007. I worked 5 years in public accounting for doing audits of financial service companies. After that, I worked for an asset management company beginning in 2012, and I did that through 2019. I worked in the finance department there where I was responsible for calculating net asset values and maintaining the books and records of hedge fund portfolios.
Can you just go through a little bit of your educational experience?
Yes, I graduated from DePaul University here in Chicago in 2007 with a Bachelor of Science. I majored in accounting. I also have an MBA from the University of Notre Dame. I graduated from that program in 2018.
Can you describe a little bit about what your work entails with the FBI?
I own, as an FBI forensic accountant, I own all aspects of the financial investigation. So that includes analyzing and reporting financial data, as well as linking funding sources to criminal activity or national security matters.
So what exactly is a forensic accountant? Can you talk about like what that means?
A forensic accountant is responsible for analyzing all financial records for, in my case, FBI cases. And so that's really just identifying the sources and uses of funds and following the flow of funds as the investigation evolves.
When you're reviewing a case, do the records typically get submitted to you, or will you do your own investigation to obtain additional records?
It could be both instances. As an FBI forensic accountant, I can issue grand jury subpoenas,
Okay.
which I typically do on my cases, but other times subpoenas and records can come from other sources.
At some point, did you become involved into a financial investigation into the Fox Lake Explorer Post bank account as well as some other bank accounts?
Yes,
Were you the first agent from the FBI to review these records?
I was not.
Okay. Prior to your involvement, someone else reviewed the bank records?
Correct. The former individual who was on this case has since left the Bureau, and my supervisor asked me to take over the investigation.
Okay. So you were assigned to this sometime in 2021?
Correct.
In preparation, you reviewed all of the records that had been submitted to the Bureau,
Correct.
and you did your own accounting of those records.
Yes.
You didn't rely on the other person's accounting.
No, I reperformed, reviewing the bank records, tracing everything back to the deposits, checks, and withdrawal support.
With respect to this investigation, did you obtain any additional documents,
I did not.
other than a couple of supplemental documents I sent to you?
Correct.
So I want to talk a little bit about the records that you reviewed in this case. To start, you reviewed a U.S. bank account that belonged to the Fox Lake Police Explorer Post 300.
Yes,
You also reviewed a U.S. bank credit card affiliated with the Fox Lake Police Explorer Post.
correct.
And those records were from September 2009 until April 2015.
Correct.
Yeah. And then from April 2015 until September 1st, 2015, you also obtained and reviewed accounts that were related to the BMO Harris bank account for the Fox Lake Police Explorer Post.
Yes,
You also received and reviewed personal bank accounts or accounts that appeared to be personal in nature.
I did.
And specifically, you reviewed an account that belonged to Melody Glinowitz, a BMO Harris bank account.
I did.
You also reviewed a number of JP Morgan Chase bank accounts, is that correct?
Correct.
One of those Chase accounts was in the name of Melody Glinowitz.
Yes,
You reviewed a second Chase account that had co-signatories of Melody Glinowitz and Jeffrey Glinowitz.
correct.
Another Chase account with the signatories Melody Glinowitz and David Glinowitz.
Correct.
And then I believe there were two Chase accounts that were in the name of Melody Glinowitz and Donald Glinowitz.
Yes,
And then two Chase accounts, one savings, one checking, with, again, the signatories Melody Glinowitz and Joseph Glinowitz.
correct.
You also reviewed accounts that were owned or were operated by Charles Joseph Glinowitz,
Yes, correct.
a U.S. bank account and U.S. bank credit card,
Yes,
and those were opened in April of 2015, is that correct?
correct.
And so prior to April 2015, did you review any personal accounts in the name of Charles Joseph Glinowitz?
I did not.
Okay. So I want to direct your attention first to the U.S. Bank Fox Lake Police Explorer account. That was from September, the records you specifically reviewed prior to your testimony today was September 2009 through April 2015. Is that right?
Correct.
Who is the signatory on that account?
Charles J. Gunowitz.
In preparation of this case, did you prepare what I'll generally call different charts related to these different accounts you reviewed?
I did.
Judge, we're going to seek to admit Peoples 2, which is the chart, the high-level summary chart of the U.S. Bank account, and I'm going to put it on the screen for you.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is Peoples 2. Can you just briefly say what this is?
Yes, this is a high-level summary of the bank account, the Fox Lake Police Explorers bank account with Charles J. Glinowitz as the signer, ending in 3740. This is the aggregation of all the credits and debits within that time period, September 2009 through April 2015. And again, this is just a high-level summary of the sources and uses of funds.
All right, so I'm going to break it down. The next slide is just the credits or inflows. So from September 2009 through April 2015, what was the total credit that this bank account took in?
$209,027.
And so did you break this up into different forms that money came into the account? Different ways that the money came into the account?
Correct. Each line item is, I grouped it by like categories. So for example, checks from individuals is its own line item. so on and so forth.
And so for the, specifically the checks from individuals and organizations, what was that line item?
That was, for the most part, checks paid to the Fox Lake Police Explorers Program from various individuals and organizations.
And how much was that?
$80,033.
And then were there also a number of checks from the village of Fox Lake that went to the Explorer account as well?
Yes, there were.
And those are reflected in this slide as well?
Yes.
Okay, we see some other credits. There were Fox Lake direct deposits. Can you talk about, a little bit about what those were?
Yes, those are Charles J. Glenowitz's payroll. They were set up as a direct deposit going into the Fox Lake Police Explorers account.
Okay, and those totaled during that time period, what amount?
$26,800.
There's also another line item for checks from Melody Glenowitz. Can you talk about that?
Yes, those were checks paid from Melody Glenowitz's BMO account. There was a variety of checks that came in covering the period September 2009 through April 2015.
Okay, and we'll get to those in a little bit. So the next slide is, these are the debits. So this is the high-level summary. Did you prepare a second chart with respect to this bank account?
I did. The second chart is more granular than this chart here.
What do you mean by more granular?
Each bucket, so each line item listed on this chart, it'll be further broken down into subcategories in the second chart, so you can get a better idea of the individual outflows.
Okay, and that other chart that you prepared is actually multiple pages long, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, so I'm now going to admit and present People's 3, which is the second chart that you prepared for the U.S. Bank Fox Lake Explorer account. Again, we'll break it down. These are the credits or inflows, and we've talked about some of these already. So this chart also describes the number of transactions that took place for a single line item. Is that right?
Correct.
So, for example, towards the bottom, you have a global line item for other Glenowitz accounts.
Yes.
And so we have a nationwide retirement solutions payment. Can you talk about what that was?
Yes. On January 10th, 2014, $32,000 was deposited into the Fox Lake Explorers Police account. This was Charles J. Glenowitz's retirement account. He took a loan from that account, and the amount was $32,000.
Okay, and you reviewed that loan paperwork
I did,
in preparation of these charts?
yes.
Okay, and then there were also 3 different line items with respect to checks from Melody Glenowitz.
Yes,
And if you see on the very far right, you have the number of transactions for each of those. And so you have 1, 4, and 8. So between September 2009 and April 2015, she wrote 13 checks from her personal BMO Harris checking account or bank account into the Fox Lake Explorer US bank account.
correct.
The next slide is the bottom half of the page, which are some of the debits. So in this case, again, this is just a sort of a higher level detail of individual debits that you saw in the individual bank statements from September 2009 through April 2015.
Correct.
So that very first one, you itemized out something called Hawaii expenses. Can you talk a little bit about what that was?
Yes, in the bank records during the month of August of 2014, there was multiple transactions that were located in Hawaii. So I grouped those transactions together for that time period and broke it out on these subcategories, whether it's car rentals, hotels, et cetera.
That did not include any airfare, did it?
It did not.
And so what was the debits for the expenses that were incurred in the state of Hawaii in the month of August 2014?
The total amount was $5,683, spot 59.
Okay, and then going down a little ways, we have hotels and airlines.
Yes,
And so the third line item down was US Airways. Can you talk about where you saw that purchased?
yes, the U.S. Airways Airline purchase was also in August of 2014, and the amount was $2,079.70.
And then there were also a couple of other airline tickets on American Airlines and US Airways.
Correct.
So there, you said that this summary that you did was multiple pages. I'm next showing you which is page 2, and then we'll break that down further. So this follows from the end of page 1, which was cash, so at the very top is ATM withdrawals. Is that
Yes.
right? All right, so going into the other, what is the other? Other is just breaks down different types of expenses you noticed?
Yeah, the other bucket comprises a variety of expenses, including auto expenses, restaurants, a variety of categories.
Okay, so for example, that very first one, can you just detail what types of auto expenses you observed on these bank statements?
The majority was made up of gas stations, repair shops, et cetera.
And again, you detailed the number of transactions you saw for those types of expenses.
Yes,
And how many was that?
323,
Totaling how much?
14,277.90.
2 line items down, you created a line item for electronics or technology stores.
Yes,
And again, can you just state for the record the amount and number of transactions for that?
the amount of electronics and technology stores was 7,501.26, and there were 29 transactions.
You also noticed a number of athletic event registrations a little bit further down.
Yes,
And how many of those were purchased?
for the athletic event registration, there was 2,810.15, and there was 21 individual transactions.
So next is the second half of page 2. This is just some additional expenditures that you noticed in the other bucket.
Yes,
And then you get into other Glenowitz accounts. I want to talk about the second one down, the Explorer account to BMO Harris 7916. Can you talk about what that was?
yes. On March 27th, 2015, a check was written from the Fox Lake Explorers account in US Bank for $4,000. This was then used to open the BMO Harris account ending 7916. And that account was called Fox Lake Police Explorers Post 300.
So at the beginning of April of 2015, the Fox Lake Explorer bank account affiliated with US Bank was closed out.
Yes, effective April 1st, 2015, the US Bank was closed out.
So as of April 1st, 2015, the balance in this US Bank account was 0.
Correct.
And a new account, also in the name of Fox Lake Explorer Post 300, was opened with a different bank, BMO Harris.
Correct.
And this $4,000 check was used to open that account.
Yes.
You also noticed that the Explorer Post on its account wrote a number of checks to some individuals, is that right?
Yes.
Specifically, did some of those individuals appear to be Glenowitz family members?
Yes.
So now I'm going to go to the next page, which is People's 23. So this check, what is People's 23?
People's 23, sorry, could you repeat?
Yeah, can you see the date on the check and who it's made out to?
Oh, yes. The check is made out to Jeffrey Glenowitz, and it's for $425.
And it was dated December 27, 2013.
Correct.
So, and this check was drawn on the Fox Lake Explorer US Bank account.
Yes.
And so you testified earlier that one of the accounts you reviewed was a Chase bank account that was jointly held by Jeffrey Glenowitz and Melody Glenowitz, is that right?
Correct.
Next is People's 24. Again, can you just briefly say what this check is?
Yes, this also looks like it's made out to Jeffrey Glenowitz. The date is July 30th, 2014, and the amount was $360. And it was a check made out of the Fox Lake Police Explorers account ending in 3740.
Thank you. Next is People's 26.
This is
Talk about
also,
this check.
this is a check made out to Donald Glenowitz, July 10th, 2014, in the amount of $200. This check was also made out of the U.S. Bank account for the Fox Lake Police Explorers ending in 3740.
Finally, People's 27.
I believe this says Joel Glenowitz. It's not as legible as the other checks. This was dated July 30th, 2014, in the amount of $100. And this is also out of the Fox Lake Police Explorers U.S. Bank account ending in 3740.
One of the accounts you reviewed was in the name of Joseph Glenowitz, is that right?
Yes,
Okay. All right, so then this is the third page of People's 3, which you detailed this detailed summary. At the bottom of the third page, you have loan payments. So I want to go through the first 2 of those. So this Department of Education student loan, can you talk about when that was made, or the bulk of that? That was 2 different transactions, but when the bulk of that was made?
yes, I believe, if I just can refer to my notes real
Sure.
quick.
I'll just direct your attention to February of 2014.
Yes,
Was there a payment made to this student loan from the Fox Lake Explorer account?
yes. It looks like the payments cover the period December 2013 through February of 2014.
Right. And the largest of those payments was made in February 2014.
Correct.
And so that was approximately a month after Joe Glenowitz had a $32,000 loan from his retirement account placed into the Explorer account.
Yes,
So there's also a line item for 14 transactions related to CAS loan payments. Were you able to review paperwork to decipher what those CAS loan payments were?
yes. The CAS loan payments are repayments to the nationwide retirement loan deposit for the $32,000. The payments were made monthly in the amount of $606.82.
Okay, so there were, over that time period of September, well, it would really be from January 2014 until April of 2015, there were 14 separate payments where that loan, the $32,000 loan, was being repaid
Yes,
out of the U.S. Bank Explorer account.
correct.
Next is People's 6. Can you tell us what People's 6 is?
Yes, this is a timeline of significant events covering both the Fox Lake Explorer account, U.S. Bank ending in 3740, as well as the Fox Lake Police Explorer Post 300, BMO Harris, ending in 7916.
So this is a timeline of sort of some significant events or money that you highlighted for both accounts.
Correct.
And so, for example, the black boxes, that there are 7 of them, what do those detail?
Those are the changes in the direct deposits going into the U.S. Bank account ending in 3740.
So those direct deposits increased over time?
They did.
All right. I want to draw your specific attention to, did you track a $7,000 amount that went from the Explorer account through some of these other accounts?
Yes, on March 26, 2014, there was a $7,000 cash withdrawal out of the U.S. Bank Police Explorers account ending in 3740.
Okay. And then from there, where did that $7,000 go?
The following day, on March 27, 2014, $7,000 was deposited into Melody Glenowitz's BMO Harris account ending in 3696.
So from there, were you able to track that $7,000 further?
Yes.
Okay, tell the court what you next saw with the dollar amount $7,000 after it was deposited into Melody Glinowitz's BMO Harris Bank account.
On April 14th, 2014, there was a check withdrawal from Melody Glinowitz's BMO Harris account ending in 3696 in the amount of $7,000.
Okay, and I'm showing you People's 30. Is this the Chase deposit slip that you reviewed in the bank records detailing that $7,000?
Yes, this is the deposit slip going into the Melody Glinowitz's Chase account.
And is this the check that that was written on Melody Glinowitz's BMO Harris account for $7,000?
Yes.
And this is People's 31. What was the next transaction you saw relative to the dollar amount $7,000?
Also on April 14th, 2014, a check deposit with check number ending 3556 was deposited into Melody Glinowitz's JP Morgan Chase savings account ending in 5394.
Right, and then, so what was the next?
Subsequent to that, on August 12th, 2014, there was a cash withdrawal out of Melody Glinowitz's JP Morgan Chase account ending in 5394 in the amount of $7,000.
Showing you People's 32. Can you say what People's 32 is?
This is a teller withdrawal slip
And it
used
is-
for a cash withdrawal.
Okay. And this was a cash withdrawal from Melody Glinowitz's JP Morgan Chase bank account
Correct,
in the amount of $7,000.
correct.
Did you notice any other transactions affiliated with the Explorer account on August 12, 2014?
Yes, on August 12th, 2014, there was a $4,000, 700 cash deposit into the Fox Lake Police Explorers account, US Bank ending in 3740.
I'm showing you People's 33, and what is People's 33 detail?
That's a teller deposit slip showing a cash deposit in the amount of $4,700 into the Fox Lake Police Explorers account.
So this cash deposit was made the same day that the $7,000 was withdrawn from the JP Morgan Chase bank account.
It was.
You already talked a little bit about Hawaii expenses that you noticed on the US Bank Fox Lake Police Explorer account, right?
Yes,
Okay, did you create a chart that sort of details some of these as well?
I did.
Okay, so next I'm showing you People's 7. Is this that chart?
It is.
All right, so this chart shows specifically a time period of July 2014 through September 2014.
Yes.
All right, I want to draw your attention first. What was the US bank account's opening balance on July 28th, 2014?
The US Bank opening balance on July 28th, 2014 was $358.
And did they receive any money deposited into that account on that day?
Subsequent to that day, they received multiple deposits.
Okay.
There-
Specifically, was there a deposit on the 28th?
Yes, there was a Lake County Fair Association deposit for $8,000.
It also continued to receive some Village of Fox Lake direct deposits.
Yes,
And then during that time period, they also received the $4,700 cash deposit you already talked about.
yes.
So as far as the expenditures during that time, did you break it up again with airline tickets that were purchased in the month of August 2014?
I did.
And what was the dollar amount there?
$3,228.
And then again, you also detailed the dollar amount that was spent in the state of Hawaii in August of 2014.
Yes,
Again, can you just say what that dollar amount was?
$5,684.
There were also that other bucket that you talked about before. There continued to be some other expenses that were withdrawn from the US Bank Fox Lake Police Explorer Post account as well.
Yes,
Next, I'm going to show you People's 4. This is well, can you just say what this chart is of?
Yes, this is the Fox Lake Police Explorers account, US Bank credit card ending in 8748.
And again, with some itemization as far as some of the expenditures.
Correct.
For example, at the top, there were several hotels purchased with this credit card.
Correct.
Aside from Springfield, a Springfield charge, there were hotels in Greenberg, Indiana, and Vermont.
Yes.
Again, there were also some auto expenses and athletic event registration expenditures on the credit card.
Correct.
And then also a Delta Airlines expense.
Yes.
Can you talk about that?
Yes, there was a Delta Airlines expense for $511.80. And there was two separate charges for Delta Airlines.
The Delta Airlines, was there additional level of detail provided in the actual bank statement?
There was.
So next, I'm going to show you People's 8. This is the June 2014 US Bank credit card statement. And does this talk about the Delta Airlines expense?
It does.
And does it provide detail about the flight?
It does.
And can you say where the flight started and where it was going to?
Yes. Looks like it went from Raleigh to Atlanta, or let's see here,
And then Atlanta to O'Hare?
in Atlanta to O'Hare, correct.
Is there a name associated with that flight information as well?
There is.
And what was that?
Don Glenowitz.
And this was in June of 2014?
It looks like May 14, 2014.
I apologize, it's the June 2014 statement.
Oh,
But the transaction was May of 2014.
yes, correct.
So the next slide, this is People's 5. This is the chart you prepared with respect to the BMO Fox Lake Police Explorer Post account.
Yes,
And we'll go, this shows the credits to that account.
yes, this is the summary of credits in that bank account.
When was this account active from? Can you just say that again?
March 2015, it was opened, and I had records through August 2015.
And so with respect to the credits, there's the $4,000 opening of the account you've already talked about.
Yes,
And then, were there any checks that were written from Melody Glinowitz's account that went into this account?
there was. There was one check from Melody Glenowitz's BMO Harris ending in 3696 in the amount of $2,781.
Next is the bottom half of the page, which shows the debits and other charges. Is that right?
Yes,
We notice there's a Best Buy, there are some Best Buy charges, is that right?
yes,
There's also an American Airlines charge.
yes,
Again, we see athletic event registration, auto expenses as well.
yes,
Again, this account also had checks that were written by the BMO Harris Explorer Post account to Glenowitz family members.
yes.
Who was the signatory on the BMO Harris account? And for the record, I'm placing People's 34 on the screen in front of you.
There was two signers on the account. It's Charles Glenowitz was the first signer, and then Melody Glenowitz was the second signer.
So the US Bank Fox Lake Police Explorer account had only Charles Joseph Glenowitz or Charles J. Glenowitz as the signatory.
Correct,
But when the BMO Harris Fox Lake Explorer account was opened in March of 2015, Melody Glenowitz was added as a signatory.
that's correct.
All right. Finally, I just want to take you through some of the checks like we did last time. I'm going to start with People's 28. Can you just briefly say what this check was?
Yes, this was a check written out to Joseph Glenowitz in the amount of $300. The check number is 1004, and this was made out of the Fox Lake Police Explorers Post 300 account, ending in 7916.
Okay. People's 29. Is this another check to a Glenowitz family member?
Yes, this is made out to Donald Glenowitz in the amount of $777. The memo
And-
stated for loan.
Yep, that's what I was gonna ask you about. So the memo in that check says loan.
Yes, it does.
And then finally, People's 25.
This is another check made out to Jeffrey Glenowitz in the amount of $300. It was June 16th, 2015. And I believe the memo says dog show.
And again, one of the other accounts you reviewed was a JP Morgan Chase account that was in the name of Jeffrey Glenowitz and Melody Glenowitz. Is that right?
Yes.
Next, we're gonna go through the checks that you reviewed, that were drawn from the Melody Glenowitz BMO personal account.
Okay,
Okay, you got these checks as part of your review of these materials?
I did.
Okay, so we'll start with People's 9. They're in chronological order. Can you just please say the date and dollar amount for this check?
So the date is September 13th, 2010. The dollar amount is $100.34.
And so this, People's 9 and all the way through, I think it's People's 22, these are all going to be checks that were written from Melody Glenowitz's personal account with money being deposited into the Fox Lake Explorer account, is that right?
Correct.
So, People's 10,
This check is January 11th, 2011, in the amount of $2,000.
People's 11. It's hard to read the date.
Yeah, I'm checking my notes here.
Approximately August 5th, 2011.
Yes, August 5th, 2011, in the amount of $731.32.
People's 12.
August 6th, 2012, in the amount of $283.50.
People's 13.
September 27th, 2012, in the amount of $79.
People's 14.
September 27th, 2012, the amount of $119.
People's 15.
May 13th, 2013, the amount of $473.71.
People's 16.
May 13th, 2013, the amount of $243.37.
People's 18. Or this is 17, sorry, People's 17.
October 1st, 2013, in the amount of $80.
People's 18.
September 5th, 2014, in the amount of $907.74.
People's 19.
May 7th, 2014, in the amount of $18.
People's 20.
December 18th, 2014, $927.06.
And is there a memo in this?
Yes, I believe it says MISC paid in full.
Okay. And then People's 21. Is this another check that was written on December 18th, 2014?
Yes, December 18th, 2014, in the amount of $4,275.72. And the memo states Hawaii reimbursed paid in full.
So on December 18th of 2014, 2 checks were written from Melody Glenowitz's personal account that had a memo of some sort of paid in full notation.
Sorry, can you repeat the?
Yep. So on December 18th of 2014, there were 2 separate checks written from Melody Glenowitz's personal account that had a notation in the memo line that said paid in full.
Correct.
And then finally, People's 22.
April 12th, 2015, in the amount of $2,781.
Does this also have a notation of paid in full?
Yes,
And this April 12, 2015 check, that was deposited into the BMO Harris Fox Lake Police Explorer account.
Correct.
So all told, between September 2010 and April 2015, there were 14 checks written from Melody Glinowitz's personal account into the two different Fox Lake Explorer police accounts that totaled, I won't make you do the math, but totaled $12,353 approximately.
Yes.
No further questions, Judge.
Cross-examination, gentlemen?
Thank you, Judge.
Good morning, Mr. Schmidt.
Good morning.
U.S. bank account number 3740.
Yes.
That was the Fox Lake Police Explorer bank account, correct?
It was.
And you examined activity in that account from, I think you said September of 2009 till April of 2015, correct?
Yes.
And Joe Glinowitz was a signatory on the account, correct?
He was.
In fact, Joe Glinowitz was the sole signatory on that account,
He
correct?
was. Correct.
The defendant in this case, Melody Glinowitz, was not and never was a signatory on that account, was she?
That's correct. She was not.
The entity on that account was Fox Lake Police Explorers,
Yes.
and the address on those checks was 301 South Route 59 in Fox Lake, Illinois, correct?
Correct.
That's the Fox Lake Police Department, right?
I don't know that for sure, but it could.
Presumably, the statements went to that address in Fox Lake, correct?
Yes,
Melody Glinowitz lives in Antioch, doesn't she?
I believe so.
Any evidence whatsoever that any of those bank account statements from September of 2009 till April of 2015 went to Melody Glinowitz?
Not that I'm aware of.
Any evidence that she ever viewed one of those statements?
Not that I'm aware of.
Any evidence that she ever audited or approved those statements?
Not that I'm aware of.
Now, on March 27th of 2015, $4,000 was removed from that U.S. bank account and placed into a Fox Lake Explorer account at BMO Harris, correct?
That's correct.
And so as of April 1st of 2000, after that 4,000, then 4 days later, there was a small transaction. The balance on the U.S. bank account as of April 1st of 2015 was zero.
That's correct.
Are you aware of any other Fox Lake Police Explorer bank accounts
Not
in
bes-
existence from September of 2009 to April of 2015?
No, just the two, the U.S. Bank and the BMO Harris.
But I'm concentrating on September of 2009 to April of 2015. That U.S. bank account that you analyzed, that was the only Fox Lake Police Explorer bank account in existence, correct?
That's correct.
So during that 6-year period of time, 7 years, 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 6 to 7 years, Joe Glinowitz was the sole signatory on the sole bank account that was owned and operated by the Fox Lake Police Explorer program, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Did your financial investigation reveal any evidence that Melody Glinowitz ever wrote a check from the Fox Lake Police Explorer account on that U.S. bank account? Ever?
No,
Did your financial investigation reveal any evidence that Melody Glinowitz used a debit card, personally used a debit card associated with that account from September of 2009 to April of 2015?
No, I'm not able to determine the user of a debit card on the bank statements alone.
Well, one of the things that you said you did, once you did, we're talking about funding sources, right? And one of the things you said that you did is you attempt to link funding sources to criminal activity, right?
Correct.
And my question to you is, were you ever able to do that in this case? Were you ever able to link funding sources or link spending in the account personally to Melody Glenowitz from September 2009 to April 2015?
I was not able to do that.
Did your financial investigation ever even reveal that she ever even possessed a debit card or a checkbook during that period of time?
No.
You mentioned a Fox Lake Police Explorer credit card that I believe was in use from about 2013 to 2015.
Correct.
Any evidence that Melody Glenowitz ever used that card?
No,
Any evidence that she ever possessed the card?
not that I'm aware of.
Any evidence that she received or viewed any statements associated with that card?
Not that I'm aware of.
Now, we know in April 2015, the U.S. Bank was closed, the U.S. Bank account was closed in the Fox Lake Police Explorer program, and the BMO Bank account was opened in the name of the Fox Lake Explorer program, correct?
Yes,
And didn't it exclude the word police? In any of the documentation that you reviewed
it was named Fox Lake Police Explorer Post 300.
on the checking account?
Yes,
Did you ever receive any 501c3 information about rechartering the program around 2015?
I don't recall reviewing that information.
So we know that this, and to be clear, we saw the exhibit that clearly dictates that now, as of April of 2015, for the first time, somebody other than Joe Glenowitz is a signatory on a Fox Lake account.
Yes,
And that person was Melody Glenowitz.
yes,
2 signatories on the account.
that's correct.
And that was from April until, we know Joe's death was on September 1st of 2015. So we've gone over these about 7 or 8 years now of financial activity. And Mel Glenowitz was a signatory on an account for a whopping 5 months, right?
Yes, correct.
By the way, and even though she was a signatory on that account for 5 months, any evidence that she ever signed one check? Did she ever use her authority and sign one check?
No, not that I'm aware of.
We saw a bunch of checks from her personal account where she was writing money into the Fox Lake Explorer account.
That's correct.
But in terms of all the checks that we saw out there, checks to Glenowitz family members, checks to other things from that account, not one of them was signed by Melody Glenowitz.
No,
You broke down a bunch of the use of funds, and we went over some of them. I know some of them was Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, restaurants, Fox Lake Theater. Any evidence that Melody Glenowitz was responsible for any of those charges?
no, not that I'm aware of.
There were use of funds that you delineated for Best Buy and health clubs, athletic events, hormonal supplements. Any evidence that Melody Glenowitz had anything to do with any of those charges?
No, based on the bank records alone, I'm not able to determine that.
It's in your report, and we've certainly heard about it in the media. There's charges on there for pornographic websites and dating services, right?
Correct.
A lot of them.
Yes,
any evidence that Melody Glunowitz was responsible for any of the pornography charges or dating services?
No.
Let's talk, that was kind of, when you look at your charts, that's what you kind of labeled use of funds. You have other charts for source of funds, correct?
Correct.
I want to talk about two specific of those. Number one, direct deposits. You said direct deposits into the Fox Lake Explorer account.
That's correct.
Direct deposits from who?
From Charles Glenowitz, his payroll.
So he would work as a police officer at the village of Fox Lake, and then somehow a portion of his money got commingled into the Fox Lake Explorer account.
That's correct.
How did that happen?
He must have set up a direct deposit form with the Fox Lake Police Department to set up the direct deposits.
Have you seen those?
I have seen them, yes.
Start with and I'm going to show you, and I can actually give you, we'll get it on the screen. I'm going to refer to defense exhibit number 6. And I think while he's setting that up, I think what you said was these direct deposits started in 2009, correct?
That's correct. December 2009.
And the starting amount was $50 per paycheck. So $50 every 2 weeks came out of Joe Glowitz's hard-earned money and into the account, right?
That's correct.
And you talked about the authorization forms, defense exhibit number 6. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
So back in December 2009, Joe Glenowitz included a canceled check from the Fox Lake Police Explorer account, U.S. Bank. That's the only bank account that we talked about, right?
That's correct.
And he asked the village of Fox Lake to directly dump his money into this charitable account.
He did.
And they did it, right?
Yes.
And then next page, later, that was increased to $100.
I have it going to 75, but yes, it does ultimately go to $100.
Yeah, we're missing that page, but if you see the note, it says change amount to 100 from 75.
Yes.
So it goes from
Yep.
50 to 75 to 100. Go to the next page, Brian. 150,
Correct.
same bank account, U.S. bank account.
It is.
That's the Fox Lake charitable account, right?
It is.
And Village of Fox Lake did that, didn't they?
They did.
And then the next page, we might be missing a few more because I know it went from 150 to 225.
It did, correct.
And then the other one that we had, that we had in Discovery, this last one, that's date stamped KL511, $450, right?
Correct.
Every 2 weeks now, Joe Glenowitz is depositing $450 of his own money into the Fox Lake Explorer account.
That's correct.
And he does that by requesting Fox Lake to do it, and Fox Lake does it.
Yes.
And Fox Lake at least had constructive knowledge from the first one that was up there, which is a canceled check, that those deposits were being made to a charitable account.
That's correct.
And the total amount that he deposited from his paychecks was $26,800, correct?
That's correct.
Now, I want to talk about this $32,000. We talked about the fact that in January of 2014, there was a $32,000 deposit that was made into the Fox Lake Explorer account, correct?
There was.
And prior to that, and this is, Brian, this is gonna be deposition exhibit, or I'm sorry, defense exhibit number, 7. You said you viewed some forms, correct?
I did.
And does this look like the cover page of the form that you reviewed?
It does. Yes.
We'll come back to that in a minute for a reason, but first I just want to go to the 3rd page of that. It's the loan disclosure statement.
Yep.
And go up the top just a little bit more, Brian. So the loan disclosure statement, this is, the borrower is Joe Glenowitz, right?
Correct.
And the lender is the Village of Fox Lake.
Correct.
And the administrator of that loan was Nationwide, correct?
That's correct.
But the lender itself is the Village of Fox Lake.
Yes,
And the amount of the loan is $32,000.
that's correct.
Now, let's go to, it's based at the bottom, Brian, 522. Did you review some documents in which Joe Glenowitz made some specific requests of the Village of Fox Lake of, first of all, where to put this $32,000?
I did not,
Okay, you see where it says, ACH authorization? And
Oh,
then
yes.
the second paragraph there?
yep,
It says, by signing this authorization, I acknowledge that my financial institution accepts direct deposits. It then says, I hereby authorize direct deposit of the loan proceeds to the account listed below.
yes, I see that.
And the account listed below is US Bank number.
3740.
That is that's the charitable Fox Lake Explorer program, correct?
It is.
So the first thing that Joe did by filling out this form was to request the Village of Fox Lake to dump his $32,000 into the Explorer account.
That's correct.
And they did that, didn't they?
They did.
And then the next sentence says, I further authorize a debit to my account for repayments in accordance with the repayment schedule on the loan agreement. You see that?
Yes,
So that means that he is authorizing or asking the Village of Fox Lake to actually take money out of this charitable account and pay off his personal loan, correct?
I believe so. Yes.
And let's go to the back pages. We'll find out how much what those loan payments were. Go to 525. The loan payments per month were $606.82, right?
Yes.
And after the $32,000 got dumped into the account, in February, for the next 14 months, I believe, $606.82 was electronically withdrawn on a monthly basis from that Fox Lake Police Explorer account, correct?
It was.
And that's because he asked the Village of Fox Lake to do it, right?
He set up the ACH form. Correct.
They did it.
Yes.
They did it, right?
Yes.
I want to talk about what happens with this $32,000. Because you had you had that chart on funds coming in and out right around the time of this Hawaii trip.
Yes,
Recall that?
I do. The timeline.
Okay, I want to concentrate on a timeline that starts with this $32,000 and ends with the Hawaii trip. Are you with me?
Yes.
So in January, we know that in January of 2014, $32,000 hits the Fox Lake Explorer account, correct?
That's correct.
Or Exhibit 9, please, Brian. And a month later, there's an electronic withdrawal circled there to the Department of Education for $15,234.59.
That's correct.
And that was at the time, of course, when Joe Glenowitz is the only signatory on this account, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So a month after he dumps his own $32,000 into the account, he has that same account pay off one of his student loans for roughly 15 grand, right?
Yes,
And that leaves about 17 grand after that of that 32, just roughly speaking.
sure.
And then, we went through this, so I don't think we have to go through all the exhibits. We'll probably go a little faster, because we've already seen these exhibits.
Yes,
Let's talk about this $7,000. Okay, you ready to track that $7,000?
yes,
So, we know that about 2 months after he deposits the 32,000 into the account, 15's now gone, paid his student loan, he's got 17 left. Joe withdraws $7,000 cash from the Explorer account on March 26, 2014, correct?
yes,
And then there's a deposit slip of $7,000 a day later that goes into Melody Glinowitz's checking account, correct?
that's correct.
Any evidence that she had anything to do with that transaction, that deposit into her account? Feel free to look at what you want to look at.
Sure, thank you. The deposit slip for the cash doesn't have any signer or signature or name on the deposit slip.
And even though, I mean, are you a CPA?
I am,
So if you have your own checking account, you got to sign to withdraw, but someone else can deposit, right?
that's correct.
We don't differentiate. If somebody wants to give us money, we'll take the money, right?
Yes, typically the banks are more strict on withdrawals versus deposits.
Okay, so we're clear that the $7,000 gets withdrawn by Joe on the 26th of March. It gets deposited into Mel's account on the 27th, and there's no evidence that she had anything to do with that, correct?
Correct.
The next thing we know that happens is 2 weeks later, Melody writes herself a check for $7,000, correct?
Yes,
And then she takes the $7,000 that was in her checking account. By the way, her checking account was the family operating account, right? You went through those.
it appeared so.
Mortgage payments,
Yes.
electric payments. By the way, we've heard this on the news too. Any evidence at all that Melody Glinowitz or Joe Glinowitz used the Fox Lake Explorer accounts to make a mortgage payment?
Not that I saw, no.
That's a fiction, right?
I didn't see mortgage payments.
Somebody made that up. So then, Mel then deposits, takes the check out of her operating account, writes herself a check, and then deposits it into her Chase, which is a savings account, correct?
Correct.
And typically, if somebody wants to earmark money for something and it's in an operating account and they want to save it for something special like a trip, they'll take it out of an operating account and put it into a savings account so they don't spend the money. That's typical, right?
That's reasonable.
That's not money laundering, is it?
Objection.
That's a legal term, sustain.
In fact, if that $7,000 hit Mel's account and she didn't know what it was, she says to her husband, hypothetically, "What is this?" And he says, "That's going to be for our honeymoon we never took to Hawaii." It would be reasonable for her to take that money out of an operating account and put it into a checking account for the trip, correct?
I can't get into their head, but it could be.
And any evidence that when that happened, if that happened, I know it's hypothetical, but if that happened, did you uncover any evidence that Melody Glinowitz knew that that $7,000 had been commingled into the Explorer account before it hit her account? Any evidence of that?
There's no knowledge of that based just on reviewing the bank records alone. I can't determine that.
The $7,000 stays in her savings account until August of 2014, correct?
That's correct.
And that was the month of the Hawaii trip, right?
I believe so.
And then that $7,000 gets withdrawn from her savings account, and 4,700 of it gets put back into the Fox Lake Explorer account.
That's correct.
and then they go on their trip to Hawaii.
Yes,
And after the trip to Hawaii is over, in fact, 3 or 4 months later, December, she writes the check for $4,000 some odd dollars saying Hawaii reimbursement paid in full.
that's
Right?
correct, that's correct. I believe it was December
Were
of
you-
2014.
Yeah, it was December 2014. Were you able to uncover any evidence that if you look at that $32,000, right? And then you include the $15,000 that was paid to his, to Joe's, to pay off his student loan.
Yes,
Then the rest of the 17, if we applied that to Hawaii, you following me?
yeah,
And then you add the $4,000 that Mel put in from her funds at the end. Any evidence that the Hawaii expenses exceeded that amount?
no,
One moment, please, Judge. That's all the questions I have, Judge.
All right, cross,
Briefly, Judge.
redirect rather,
Thank you,
sorry.
Judge.
Why can't you determine who is making a debit card purchase or cash withdrawal from bank statements alone?
yeah, on a bank statement, it will show a Visa, debit card, PIN or no PIN. It won't list who the user of that debit card, like who actually swiped it. And so when I'm reviewing bank records, I can identify that it is a debit card transaction, but I cannot determine who was the actual individual who swiped the card.
For example, a debit card would have a PIN number associated with it, right?
Yes,
So if the debit card is in Charles Joseph Glenowitz's name, if his wife knows the PIN, she could use it.
she could, yes,
They don't typically require a signature to make a debit purchase, right?
that's correct.
Whereas a check may have a signature on it, you can see if it's Joe's signature or Melody's signature.
Yes,
With respect to this $32,000 loan,
Yeah.
Mr. Morrison asked you who the lender is, and the lender was the Village of Fox Lake. And that's because Joe's employment, he was employed by the Village of Fox Lake.
that's correct. It was a retirement account,
Right, through the Village of Fox Lake, his employer.
correct.
Right. But Joe was the one authorizing the loan into the US bank account,
Yes,
and then he was the one authorizing the US bank account to pay back that loan.
yes,
No one else from the Village of Fox Lake ever signed any document authorizing that.
no,
They were simply the lender because his employer was the Village of Fox Lake.
that's correct.
With respect to these Hawaii trip expenditures, so the $4,700 cash deposit was on August 12th, 2014.
That's correct.
There were a number of purchases related to Hawaii that occurred prior to August 12th, is that right?
I don't have
Judge,
the
if you
detail
could-
in front of me.
You could put my screen on, please.
I will.
I'm showing you the bank statement from August of 2014. Are there purchases from August 1st for the US Airways that you detailed earlier?
Yes, that's correct.
And then on August 4th, there are additional Hawaii expenditures with respect to Island Air
Yes,
cruise. So these were done and made on the Fox Lake Explorer account prior to the cash deposit.
yes,
And as you talked about when I first asked you questions, on July 28th, the balance of this account was $328.
I believe that is amount, just let me verify.
Okay.
$358 was the opening balance.
$358. And on
Yes.
that same date, an $8,000 check from the Lake County Fair Association was deposited into that account.
That's correct.
And then finally, just, it's not your job to determine criminal charges, it's your job to talk about activity in a bank account.
That's correct.
And then you funnel that information to law enforcement or a state's attorney's office to decide where to go from there, right?
That's correct.
No further questions.
Cross?
You said that in regards to the $32,000, Joe sent the authorization to the Village of Fox Lake, correct?
He did.
And so he's the one that authorized it, correct?
He signed the form, yes.
And the Village of Fox Lake facilitated that, correct?
That's correct.
They facilitated both dumping $32,000 into the charity account, correct?
Yes,
And then they facilitated spending $608 per month in paying off his personal student loans, correct?
sorry, can you repeat that question?
The Village of Fox Lake facilitated spending $608 per month from that account to pay off Joe Glinowitz's student loan, correct?
Yes, he set up the authorization form, and then they were pulling the payments off on a monthly basis.
And the defendant, Melody Glinowitz, that's sitting in the defendant's chair, any evidence that she had anything to do with any of that?
No,
Thank you.
All right, you may step down. Thank you,
Thank you.
Agent. Maybe just a second. Site. The attorneys assured me that there is no 5-minute witness that they can call, so we will go to lunch, a break for lunch, and be back ready to begin for the attorneys at 1:30.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. I'm leaving everything out, okay? Just in case you need to use, prepare, or anything like that. Okay. Have a nice lunch, everyone.